people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. TGB President Tom Brown's letter to Congress in support of the Muhammad Ali American Boxing Revival Act, which I got from CSAC. Not sure why the date says November 5th, or why it's unsigned.
CSAC, the California State Athletic Commission?
Why is it dated for November? It could be that what John S. Nash obtained was a draft copy of a letter they intend to send out.
That would explain why it's dated for all the way out there in November, and that would explain why the letter isn't signed yet. The letter reads, as the president of TGB Promotions LLC, an internationally known boxing promotional company, I write in strong support for H.R. 4624, the Muhammad Ali Boxing Revival Act. For well over 30 years, I have been intimately involved in all aspects of boxing. To be frank, the great American sport of boxing has been floundering and is in need of help. In my opinion, the Muhammad Ali Boxing Revival Act is the solution. It will position boxing to flourish by adding competition and accountability to this great sport. As HBO, Showtime, and ESPN stopped broadcasting boxing, the questions are why and what can be done. The Muhammad Ali Boxing Revival Act fundamental innovation is the express allowance of an alternative system in which a unified boxing organization is permitted to compete with the current sanctioning organization model. Congress, when it enacted the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act 25 years ago, recognized that the lack of centralized industry organization was a core problem hampering boxing. In fact, Congress found that the lack of such an organization has led to repeated occurrences of disrepute and coercive business practices in the boxing industry, to the detriment of professional boxers nationwide. The Muhammad Ali Boxing Revival Act fixes that problem. Given the legislation's framework, a UBO will invest in and promote fighters' careers and promote matches that fans want to see. Boxing events are both unpredictable and sporadic, which make it extremely difficult for fans to follow the sport. Bringing predictability and consistency to event promotions and broadcasts will grow the sport in a way that is similar to the growth in MMA over the last 20 years. Further, I believe this legislation will open a pathway to a new generation of boxers as well as fans that do not exist today. To me, that prospect is incredibly exciting. I should also add that the health and safety components of this bill will benefit boxing immensely. These fundamental reforms, such as medical testing, third-party anti-doping programs, and health insurance requirements, will raise the bar for the entire sport. In my experience, the Muhammad Ali Boxing Revival Act is the best thing that has come along in years. I commend you for considering this groundbreaking legislation, and I truly hope it is enacted by Congress and the President.
Why would Tom Brown be in support of this reform, this Muhammad Ali Act revival? I'm an old cynic and I can't help it. So when I see that Tom Brown of TGB, which is just another way of saying PBC, is in support of this reform, this Muhammad Ali Revival Act, it's got to be because they've got some skin in the game. They either want to form their own UBO,
though I don't think they have the resources, the money to do that.
At least it doesn't look like it based on the sparse schedule they've been putting out the last 2 years, or they're going to be working with TKO, making fighters available to them, and thus they are in support of the Revival Act. You will notice that Louis DeCubas of PBC has been palling around with Turkey LL Sheik. Turkey LL Sheik is one of the financiers for TKO, so maybe they've worked it out to where some of the PBC's guys are going to be boxing under the TKO banner.
Not the familiar names, the unfamiliar names, the ones that people really don't know.
Just a passing thought, just a suggestion. I wonder how Sean Zettel and all of his liberal buddies feel about TGB, which is just another way of saying PBC.
How do they feel about TGB supporting this bill where they are against it?
And do they even know what they're against? Because I don't think they do. You know, a part of this reform is a higher minimum amount paid to the boxers per round.
More money for the boxers per round.
The minimum amount paid to a boxer per round varies from state to state, and a part of this reform is raising that minimum. I don't think that Sean Zettel and all his online buddies are aware of that. I think the only part of this they focused on was Dana White, because for them, it wasn't about protecting the boxers or helping the boxers. It was just about going after Dana.
Dana White is bad.
Sort of infantile approach to activism, when if it was really your intention to look out for the fighters and protect the fighters, you would have read the literature that came out weeks ago. This could turn out to be a good thing for your average boxer. Your average boxer that doesn't make seven figures per fight like a Shakur Stevenson or a Teofimo Lopez. You know how many boxers don't make that kind of money?
More than the ones that do.
And this is not obligatory. This is just an alternative to the existing model. The boxers themselves don't have to box under these UBOs. For them, a lot doesn't change, so they don't really have to be worried. The ones who need to be worried are the alphabet organizations, because this is an alternative to that.
A UBO, a league unto itself, doesn't have to work with the sanctioning bodies, and thus, they're cutting them out of the picture, or at least their picture.
How many times and how many people have you seen complain over the years about the sanctioning bodies and their inconsistent policies and favoritism? The WBC and the WBA are tantamount to flim-flam artists.
If anybody should be worried about the formation of UBOs in the sport of boxing, it's not really the boxers or the boxing fans themselves. It's actually the sanctioning bodies, because this would offer an alternative that doesn't require a boxer to go through them.
That's who ought to be staying up late at night worried about this. That's who needs to be biting their nails more than anybody. Though, I'm no wide-eyed optimist. If TGB is all of a sudden in support of the Muhammad Ali Revival Act, it's gotta be because they've got some skin in the game. It's gotta be because either they would hope to form a UBO of their own, or they're gonna be working with TKO.
I think it's the latter.
Over to some inconvenient truths per a Twitter user that goes by the name A Talker. Espinoza, Torres, and Delgado are all fighting on a Zanfer promotion show. Cortez is being put on a California club show. Zayas is turning down opponents. Muratalla is in limbo. Mason, Norman, Betterbeef, Mabili, and Lopez are on Riyadh season-back shows. Mayer is going to Eye of the Tiger management, and Keyshawn is hinting at retirement. Top Rank are a mess right now.
These are not good optics. There was a complete blackout in the month of August, and there's been a complete blackout this entire month, with the hope being that by the time the fall gets here, Top Rank will be back up and running with a new broadcast partner. But as it stands, no new news has come out. Just more of the same. Rumors and rumblings about Top Rank going to Stars, and
the only new news involving a lot of top-ranked fighters, a lot of fighters you normally see on top-ranked shows, is that Emiliano Vargas, Richard Torres, and Rafa Espinoza are set to be boxing south of the border in November on a Zanfer Promotions show. And so you figure that if that many of Top Rank's guys are boxing on Zanfer in November,
they're not boxing on Top Rank. So I guess we can't expect Top Rank to be back up and running in November. I'm starting to wonder if they're going to be up and running at all for what remains of this year. Remember,
October hasn't even started yet. So I guess that based on this, we can't expect Top Rank to return next month, and it doesn't look like they're going to be returning in November either. It's not encouraging. Initially, I had a lot of confidence and a lot of faith that they'd be back up and running in a timely fashion based on their track record, their decades of experience in the sport.
Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I overestimated their aptitude, their ability to deal with this at a time where Every single major American broadcaster has pulled away from boxing.
It's increasingly difficult for them to find a new broadcast partner, let alone one that's going to give them the kind of budget they were getting on ESPN, something to the tune of 80 to 90 million
per year.
Their absence leaves behind a vacancy that an MVP, for example, could hope to fill at a time where Top Rank and the PBC jointly are in a weakened state. Somebody like an MVP that's still making their bones in the industry. This leaves the door open for them to fill those slots with their own shows, and not just them, but TKO as well.
MVP has a show this weekend and another one next month.
It's not even counting the big show that they're doing in November between Jake and Gervonta, that in the absence of Top Rank, MVP could emerge as a major player. And never forget that money moves everything. Money is what it's all about.
Money and fight dates. In the sport of boxing, if Top Rank is at a point where they by themselves can no longer accommodate their fighters, those fighters might start to float away. It hasn't happened yet.
This is not what that is, because Zenfer actually works closely with Top Rank. So that many of Top Rank's fighters fighting on a Zenfer show indicates that those fighters are still with Top Rank. But if this goes on for too long...
In a doomsday scenario, all of those Top Rank all-stars, your Richard Torres, your Emiliano Vargas, your Rafa Espinoza, they could be divided between Matchroom, MVP, and Golden Boy.
What about PBC? Wouldn't some of them go over there?
Theoretically they could, but if a fighter is looking for fight dates and money, well, the PBC doesn't seem to have much of either.
So just remember that when news initially broke that ESPN would not renew with Top Rank, the story was that Top Rank would return with a new broadcast partner in the fall. Fall is right around the corner.
And where's Top Rank? Where's these 2-3 new broadcast partners we kept hearing about? What is going on?
Would be a critical blow to the American boxing scene if an established promotional outfit like a Top Rank all of a sudden went under, just like that. Fledgling outfits, newer ones like MVP and TKO, could hope to fill the void.
But let's be honest, they ain't no Top Rank.
Speaking of Top Rank and Top Rank fighters, unified middleweight champion Janibek took to his social media and stated, "If Crawford agreed to fight me, I would gladly face him, and our fight would be the kind of match every fan would watch with excitement, not wanting to miss a single second."
But Terence Crawford, immediately after the Canelo Alvarez fight, did indicate that he might move down to middleweight. That's assuming that he doesn't retire, because he still might.
Right now, I have no doubts he's on holiday, enjoying all the fruits of his labor, all the money he made, and just taking it all in. A Crawford versus Janibek fight as a talking point as this year closes really was not on my bingo card, because I figured win, lose, or draw with Canelo, Crawford will retire shortly afterwards. There's not much to do after that. There is no other fight that he can have that would rival that one in terms of size and scale and significance.
It doesn't really get bigger than beating Canelo at this point.
And yet, there are still a lot of people in the industry that are willing to entertain the notion that Terence is not quite done yet. Not at 37 years old, because he's too hot right now. His name is buzzing in all the ways it wasn't a few years ago when the PBC tried to freeze him out.
He came out on top, and he has every opportunity right now to go out on top, to go out undefeated, to go out a champion, but some think that Terence is hyper-competitive, and he still wants more. In this instance, the opportunity to become a 6-weight world champion. Very few fighters become 4-weight world champions, let alone 5, like Terence. But even fewer become champions at 6 weights. 6.
It's a very short list. What do you imagine a Crawford versus Janibek fight might look like? And does Terence Crawford stand a legitimate chance of winning? I want to say that I think he does, because look at what he did to Canelo. A better fighter than Janibek by and large.
Better in every way. A bigger puncher, a more experienced and decorated fighter, battle-tested against better fighters than Janibek has proven to be. And look at what Terence did to him. At this point, I don't think anybody can count Terence out.
I've only ever bet against Terence Crawford once. Just once. And that was in the Canelo fight. I felt that he'd been out too long, he's getting on in age, he's moving up 2 weight classes, and the deck is stacked against him. I was wrong. I made a mistake. And I don't plan on making it again. So if Crawford were to fight Janibek Alimkhanalai in the not-so-distant future, I think Terrence would beat him.
It's just a question of how, because Janibek Alimkhanalai is not a carbon copy of Canelo. If you're gonna break down the fight, you have to understand Janibek is built different. He's got different physical dimensions to a Canelo. He fights different.
Janibek Alimkhanalai is a southpaw, a rather monotonous one, if I do say so myself. I think he's durable. I think physically he's strong. He packs a big punch. But in terms of X's and O's, he's not the best. In terms of variety, his combinations are repetitive and predictable.
Sometimes appearing to be a simple 1-2 kind of guy. A simple 1-2 kind of fighter.
Capitalizing off of the mistakes his opponents make that a Terrence Crawford would not make. He's taller than Terrence Crawford, though oddly enough, Crawford has more reach than he does. He has more wingspan. The difference in height between them is negligible. Janibek is about inch and a half taller than Terrence, but Terrence's wingspan, he's got about 4 inches on Janibek in terms of wingspan.
That's important.
Janibek wouldn't be the first time that Terrence Crawford fights a fighter that is somewhat taller than he is. Victor Postol was taller than Terrence Crawford, so was Jose Benavidez. Granted that Janibek is an even bigger man than those men were, and a bigger puncher. He's not a bigger puncher than a Canelo, and Terrence dealt with his power just fine. So I think he'd be able to deal with Janibek's. Janibek's best weapon in this fight would have to be his work rate, his activity. That he is a fresher, younger fighter than a Canelo, and he's busier within a round than Canelo.
One thing about Canelo Alvarez is he's very careful with his output. He has been for years. He doesn't just go out there winging shots. He tries to place them.
He tries to be accurate in tandem with landing forcefully. Canelo Alvarez loads up on his punches. That half a second, millisecond that he loses loading up on his shots, he's telegraphing them.
At least to Terrence Crawford he was. Terrence Crawford could see the punches coming from Canelo. Could he see the punches coming from Janibek? I think he could. I think he would. Janibek's best punches really are his straight punches from the outside coming in tandem with his height.
Because he is a little bit taller than Terrence. Terrence would have to beat those feet and play at the angles. Don't forget that Terrence is a switch hitter, where Janibek is limited to fighting out of the southpaw stance. Terrence can switch it up on him. Start off as a southpaw, then transition over to orthodox to get off that straight right hand.
Often dubbed the southpaw killer, it's a punch that many southpaws are susceptible to due to the angle of attack.
And if you doubt my rationale and think I'm being a slave to the moment, that because Crawford beat Canelo, he beats everybody, need I remind you that Denzel Bentley, a domestic-level UK fighter, gave Janibek Alimkhanalai fits when they fought.
Need I remind you that he needed 9 rounds to dispatch a greatly overmatched Andrei Mikhailiovic, who was tantamount to a punching bag, nowhere near the level of a Terrence Crawford. So against Terrence, I think Janibek would come up short. I would go with Terrence to win.
I don't know if we're gonna get this fight, but if we do, I got Terrence.